What is Hanukkah and why does it matter? We're going to be sitting down today with TV host Erick Stakelbeck of TBN to talk about the history of Hanukkah, what it means, and why the holiday takes on increased significance considering everything we're watching happen right now in the Middle East. You are listening to Higher Ground with Billy Hallowell. I'm Billy Hallowell, and I'm excited to get into this conversation. I have to tell you, as a Christian, I often have heard Hanukkah, seen people celebrate it, and I thought, oh, that's really nice, but I've lacked the context and understanding of not just what people are celebrating, but what the deep biblical history of the celebration truly is. One of the things that's so fascinating this time of year as we ponder Christmas and Jesus's birth is the fact that Jesus himself celebrated Hanukkah. And Hanukkah happened, the events that underpin it, and we're going to get into this in just a moment, but it happened between the Old and the New Testament. So we don't see the events recounted with the Maccabees there in Scripture, and yet it happened in that period. It was celebrated by Jesus and his followers. And so we're going to get into all of that, but we're also going to be talking, obviously, Israel, the Middle East. Erick Stakelbeck of TBN has spent a lot of time in the Middle East. He considers it almost a second home. And so we're going to get into his perspective on what's happening there and why it matters. And so with no further ado, let's welcome Erick Stakelbeck to Higher Ground. Erick Stakelbeck, you have a new special out, a Hanukkah special, which is really interesting timing, of course. We are in the middle of Hanukkah, but also what is happening right now in Israel and the anti-Semitism we're seeing around the world. It is quite the time to be talking about this subject. Tell us a little bit about the special.
Well, Billy, first of all, thanks for having me. And I think the thing that really set this special apart for me is we got on the ground in Israel where the Hanukkah story actually happened. The Maccabees, Billy, are the heroes of the story. This occurred about a little less than 200 years before the birth of Jesus. And what it was a battle for religious freedom and unfolded in the Modin area of Israel, not too far from modern day Tel Aviv. And you had the Greek Seleucid Empire, which was a secular atheistic tyranny, and they literally tried to stamp out Judaism. They banned Judaism. They banned the Bible. They desecrated the temple in Jerusalem. They actually put a pig's head in the temple. So this was a very, very precarious time for the Jewish people in Israel. And there were many in Israel, by the way, who were on the side of the Greeks, who wanted to Hellenize Israel and do away with that biblical civilization, that those biblical foundations that Israel was founded on. And yet the Maccabees rose up in this incredible battle for religious freedom. They ultimately prevailed. It's a story, I believe, Billy, that has great significance today for two reasons. Number one, obviously, Israel, as we speak, is once again engaged in an existential struggle for its way of life against terrorist and tyrannical forces. But secondly, and Billy, you document this so well on CBN News, here in the West, here in the United States, more and more people's religious freedoms, particularly those of Christians, are being infringed upon. So the story of the Maccabees and their message, I think, is even more relevant today.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the intertestamental period, between the Old and the New Testament. And I think that's one reason a lot of Christians don't know about Hanukkah, right? They know the holiday, they know the name, but they don't know the significance and the meaning. Can you talk a little bit about the miraculous side of the holiday? What is actually being celebrated in that?
Yeah, Billy, first of all, that's a great point. The intertestamental period, as you said, it is in a Catholic edition of the Bible, the two books of Maccabees, but Protestants consider it a historical record and an accurate historical record, but it's not in the official Protestant canon. But when it comes to why Christians should know about Hanukkah and the miraculous nature of this holiday, number one, I care about what God cares about, what Jesus cares about. And the Gospel of John, chapter 10, says that Jesus observed Hanukkah. It says that he went up to Jerusalem to celebrate the Feast of Dedication. That's another name for Hanukkah, the Feast of Dedication or the Festival of Lights. So Jesus, as a good Jew during that time when he was living, observed Hanukkah. That's number one. Number two, the miraculous nature of this holiday. When the Maccabees, led by Judah the Hammer, recaptured Jerusalem from this pagan Greek empire, they rededicated the temple in Jerusalem. The problem was, Billy, they only had enough oil to light the menorah inside the temple for one night, But miraculously, that oil burned for 8 nights straight. And there you have it, those 8 nights of Hanukkah, against all odds, a complete miracle. There was barely any oil left, and yet that oil lasted, and the menorah burnt and was lit for 8 days straight. So that's the crux of the Hanukkah miracle.
It's interesting. You brought up a few moments ago, obviously, what is happening right now in the Middle East, why it's important for us to be aware of the holiday and to be thinking about all of these things, that battle for religious liberty. I mean, you look at this anti Semitism, the things that are being said on college campuses that are happening all around the world at different protests. You've been covering Israel for a long time, you spent a lot of time there. What has it been like for you to watch this resurgence of anti-Semitism? It's always been there, but it really feels like we're watching in the wake of this horrific attack against the Jews be treated in such a horrible way.
Yeah, Billy, for me personally, and this is personal, as you said, I'm in Israel on a regular basis. I consider Jerusalem my second home. Some of my dearest friends in the world live in Israel. As a matter of fact, some of them are serving in the Israel Defense Forces right now. They've left their families. They are in Gaza as members of the IDF Reserve. So for me, it's deeply personal. And to see the resurgence of anti Semitism, including right here in our backyard in the United States, I've had a range of emotions. One has obviously been anger, righteous anger. Number two, frustration, exasperation. It can be disheartening, but I have to remind myself these are signs of the times. And I believe we live in prophetic times. I believe we live in Bible times today. And Jesus didn't say it was going to be easy. And the Bible is very clear about that. I believe this resurgence of anti Semitism is a sign of the times, as is the mere existence of Israel. Israel will prevail in this struggle against Hamas and, by extension, Hezbollah and the Iranian regime. But we can expect, Billy, a good chunk of the world to continue to gnash its teeth and point its finger at Israel. We live in times, I think, the prophet Isaiah described very well. He said, "Woe to those who call good evil and evil good." Welcome to 2023. That's exactly what we're seeing on college campuses in particular right now. It's only going to get worse, I believe, on one hand. But on the other hand, Billy, I believe that believers, I feel like followers of Jesus in particular, will continue, like modern day Maccabees, to step up and shine a light in the darkness. We have a biblical mandate to do exactly that.
Yeah, what you just said is so true and so important, right? Calling good evil and evil good. I mean, there's no world in which, regardless of what people think about the Palestinian and Israeli battle that has gone on, and we know there's a lot of biblical history there, but push all that to the side. What Hamas did in October, on October 7th, there should be no question. There's no excuse, there's no justification. And yet people are out there tripping over themselves, trying to justify or excuse away the horrific behavior that we saw. And I think you're right. We are going to see this get worse. A lot of people, and we have to be careful with this, but they look at this and they say, what's happening prophetically, right? You brought up Isaiah, you go to Ezekiel, the mere existence of Israel, right? And how that is prophetic. Ezekiel 36 to 39. What do you make of that? Because I know a lot of questions around prophecy are sort of surrounding this discussion right now.
I think a few things. Number one, the chess pieces prophetically, I believe, Billy, are clearly moving on the board. Number one, the mere existence of Israel, the miraculous rebirth of Israel in 1948, I believe, set the prophetic time clock into overdrive. Now, I know everyone has different prophetic interpretations, but you mentioned the book of Ezekiel. I look in particular at chapter 38 and 39, the war of Gog and Magog. Funny name, I know, but Ezekiel lays out a massive battle that he says will occur in the latter days. I believe Russia leads this latter days invasion force of Israel alongside Persia, modern day Iran, which is specifically named in that passage of Ezekiel. I think Turkey's going to be in the mix, other Islamic nations, and they're going to come against Israel eventually. And Billy, I think it's no coincidence that Russia, Iran, and Turkey, which historically have been rivals, have now come very close together. In particular, Russia and Iran are aligned very, very closely. It's a full blown military alliance. So again, I feel like these chess pieces are moving. I think the Gaza war is one piece to this. I feel like it's laying the groundwork for larger conflicts to come. Israel eventually is going to have to deal with Hezbollah to the north, which is magnitudes more powerful than Hamas. And the Iranian regime is the head of the snake at the end of the day, pulling the strings on all these terror groups that surround Israel right now. So eventually, Iran will need to be dealt with. The problem there is that Russia and Iran, again, are very, very close now. And Russia's going to have something to say about that. So I think we're seeing the stage set for larger battles to come. Before anyone gets disheartened and hides under their table, here's the good news. Ezekiel is very clear that God intervenes in this war of Gog and Magog and really shows his face to the world in a very public way, like he hasn't in 2,000 years. He has his say in a very, very public way that the entire world will see when he literally destroys this invasion force on the mountains of Israel.
And I love the way you just described that the stage is sort of set. A lot of people wondering what's going on. There's no doubt about it. This event will tie in and will dovetail into whatever it is that's going to happen next. You brought up, obviously, Russia and all of these key players, Persia/Iran, which we see there in scripture. So there's a lot there to unpack. But just getting back to your special before we close here, as we close, this is an important topic, Hanukkah, to understand why the Jewish people celebrate it, what it means to them. And especially now that I think we're aware of that. And also just as Christians in general, that we understand the history that underpins what it is we believe that led, the Jewish tradition that led into our faith. And so, as we sort of come to a close, where can people go if they want to watch this special, if they want to see you in action?
Yeah, you can go to the TBN app, Bill. You can find it right there and watch it also on our YouTube channel at TBN. And, it's funny, growing up, as a Gentile Christian kid growing up, I said, man, I feel sorry for my Jewish friends. They don't celebrate Christmas. All they have is Hanukkah. I didn't know anything about Hanukkah, but uncovering this story over the past few years for me has been a real treat. And seeing the real significance of it and to see the Jewish people in Israel, how passionately, how seriously they take Hanukkah. They know the significance. And I had one Jewish friend in Israel say to me recently that this may be the most significant Hanukkah in over 2,000 years since the original Hanukkah, considering the stakes right now and everything unfolding in Israel. Modern day Maccabees on the battlefield right now in the form of the Israel Defense Forces, again, fighting for their very existence and their way of life.
Erick, as always, appreciate you joining me today.
Thanks, Billy. God bless. See you again soon.
That's all for today's Higher Ground. Appreciate you joining me today. I hope you will tune in next week for another episode of the show. And hey, be sure to head over and give us a review. Positive reviews always welcomed of the show. If you're listening on Apple, you can do it there, or wherever you are listening to the show. Leave us a review. Let people know what you think, and we'll see you again next week.